Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's 3 o'clock. After 3 o'clock, I think I will call the meeting to order. Um, we're we're not expecting Councillor Nash necessarily, um, but if he does turn up partway through, then of course we'll get our host to admit him. But so far, we have the other four members of council, myself, Mayor Comrie, um, Councillors Bray, Lamb, and Woods. And we have our CAO clerk, Michelle Henry, our deputy clerk, Wendy Schroeder, our planning assistant, Paula Macri. Those staff are present on the call, and we also have our two proponents for the review of our official plan and zoning bylaw um, represented here. And so I'd like to welcome you, Jason Farragon and David Wellwood from JL Richards, and Jamie Robinson from MHBC. So thank you all for joining us. The purpose of this meeting today was to give you a brief opportunity to start with, to present highlights of what your approach to the requirements that we set out in our request for proposal. Council has had a chance to review the proposals. And then we would get to some questions. And if there are questions about specifically about pricing and related matters that you're uncomfortable dealing with in an open session, then we can go into a closed session to talk about those, and then that would be individually, of course, and then we'll resume at the end of the meeting into an open session for any sort of final discussion. So that's just a kind of an overview of how we think the meeting should work. So my first official task then would be to call the meeting to order. And it's actually 3:04 p.m. And I will ask councilors if any of them have a pecuniary interest to disclose in today's proceedings. Okay, hearing none, I'll let the record show that there was no declaration, no pecuniary interest declared. Next, on the order papers here would be a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Can I get a mover and second?
I'll move.
Councillor Bray moves. Thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
We got Councillor Woods. All right. Thank you, Councillor Woods.
Thanks.
Any discussion? Can I ask then all those in favor, and you can indicate by just saying, if I can't see your hand up on the screen, you can say yes.
Councillor Woods, yes.
Thank you. I believe everyone present then is in favor of the agenda. And that will allow us to get into it without further ado. So the order that we have the presentations is JL Richards first, and David and or Jason, if you would like to proceed, the floor is yours. I think we've got 15 or 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions from council.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Would it be possible to get control of the screen? We have a presentation we'd like to share.
Yes, I believe that can be done.
Okay.
That's our clerk.
There you go.
Yep. All right. And I'll make this full screen here. Okay. So, thanks very much for inviting us. My name is David Wellwood. I'm a senior planner with JL Richards, based in our Sudbury office. I'm joined here with my colleague Jason Farragon, who will introduce himself in a moment as well, and would like to go through a few slides, just kind of outlining our proposal in a little more detail. And as you said, we'll turn it back over to you for some questions afterwards. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason, to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Mr. Mayor, members of council, let me just begin by sort of saying that on behalf of JL Richards and Associates Limited, Dave and I are very pleased to be here with you this afternoon to share additional information with you so you can make an informed choice on this very important project for your municipality. As Dave mentioned, as I've said, my name is Jason Farragon. I'm a registered professional planner. I'm certified to practice in the province of Ontario. I've been practicing planning now in Ontario for about 26 years. And during the day, I am a principal associate and the chief planner with JL Richards. I too, very similar to Dave, are based out of our Sudbury office, and I've been practicing in Sudbury and surrounding area now since 2004, I believe is the date. So definitely a beautiful part of the province. But Dave, if we can go down to the next slide. We thought we'd begin by sort of describing a little bit about sort of our company. So I'm going to begin with sort of some high level remarks, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Dave, who's going to walk through some of the details associated with the proposal that we've submitted to the municipality. So if you don't know much about JL Richards and Associates Limited, I think we're a company that was founded in Ottawa in about 1955. And since that time, we've grown to a staff complement of about 475 individuals located in 6 offices across the province of Ontario. As a company, we're a multidisciplinary firm. So we provide a wide range of both engineering, architectural, and land use planning services. What we believe distinguishes us from many other firms within the marketplace, certainly many of the larger firms that exist that are out there today, is that we are 100% employee owned. So 90% of our employees own shares within our company. And what that means is that we're highly invested both in the work that we do and the clients that we serve. Dave, if we can go to the next slide, please. So we thought we'd bring just a slide which sort of illustrates some of the areas where we practice currently and have practiced planning in the past. In the province of Ontario. JL Richards as a company does work globally, and we certainly do a lot of work across the country. The vast majority of our practice for all of our disciplines, both engineering, architecture, and planning, is focused in Ontario. And the map here reflects some of the projects that we've done over the years. And I think what it illustrates is that we have a very good perspective on planning in various parts of Ontario, be it Northern Ontario or Central Ontario or Southwestern or Eastern Ontario. So if selected, we bring that breadth and depth of experience to this particular assignment as well. Dave, next slide, please. So JL Richards as a firm, you'll often hear us describe markets and disciplines, and this slide is just an opportunity to talk about that a little bit. So from a governance standpoint, we sort of break ourselves down into 2 halves, if you will. And on the left-hand side of the slide is our sort of key markets. So buildings relates to primarily architecture, civil, municipal, and planning is where Dave and I live and work. So that's why that's outlined in bold. We also have a group that's known as the Innovative Energy Group, and their purpose in life is to basically decarbonize the planet, if you will. Environmental infrastructure, which relates to water and wastewater treatment facilities. We have a large group that does an awful lot of mining projects, in particular in Northern Ontario and other jurisdictions in Canada. And we have a team that focuses on special projects, and that's essentially public-private partnerships or alternative delivery systems. On the other side of the slide are the disciplines. So these are the groups that are responsible for project delivery, essentially. And I won't go through all of the disciplines that are there, but as you can sort of see, they span the full spectrum of engineering, architecture, and planning as well. And so we've highlighted planning again because that's where Dave and I sort of live and work on a day-to-day basis. What I would sort of say is when you look at the sort of, we presented them as sort of almost, you know, two sort of halves of the company. But in reality, there's an awful lot of collaboration that occurs between the markets and the disciplines, which we believe provides us with sort of competitive advantage, for lack of a better word, because what it means is that we as land use planners have a tendency to take a much more comprehensive approach to things, because we're steeped in engineering, we're steeped in architecture as well, and we have a strong focus on project delivery. So, you know, not only do we know how to plan, but we also know how projects are done, which gives us, I think, a different perspective when it comes to writing policy or writing zoning bylaw requirements for a municipality. Dave, we'll go to the next slide, please. So we brought this slide in getting ready for this presentation, and we were putting together our proposal to the municipality. We spent some time looking through your most recent strategic plan and sort of thinking about the values that you have as a community. We all know that, you know, value-driven work and value-driven leadership, value-driven collaboration is very important. Your values as a municipality, we believe, strongly align with our own values. And what this slide represents is the key values that we bring to projects. So up at the top, obviously, collaboration. If selected, we will collaborate, you know, very effectively with the municipality. Dave and I both have background experience in the municipal sector. So you know, we sort of know and understand municipalities and know how to fit in, if you will, if I could use that term. The next is accountable. When we take on a project and decide to work with a client, we are accountable both to the community, we're accountable to the project, we're accountable to our client as well as our profession. And we think about all of those things as we sort of do our work. Hand in glove with collaboration is communication. We like to think that we're very effective communicators, in particular on proactive communication. So if we see an issue, say, that's sort of sitting on the horizon, we don't wait for the issue to be sitting at our front door. We flag it early. We like to talk about the issues that we see so we can consider options and alternative approaches that work for our clients and again, work for the communities that we serve. The next is integrity. I think Dave, myself, and Jamie as well are all registered professional planners. We're all certified to practice in Ontario. So what that means is we adhere to a high value of ethics and professionalism, which drives our approach as registered professional planners. And again, hand in glove with collaboration, communication is engagement, which we know is a strong feature of this particular project. And Dave will walk through some of the details that we've proposed in terms of how we'll engage the community within the planning process. We know when we do these projects, you know, there are many voices in the community, and sometimes, you know, there different individuals have different visions for what the community should look like in the future. And by adhering to sort of these values, we're able to sort of create a space, if you will, that the project can unfold, where people can feel safe to come forward to express their views. Our job is to make sure that we're listening, that we're understanding those views, and that we bring back information to council so that council can make an informed choice about the strategic direction that it wants to take for land use planning within the community. Dave, we'll go to the next slide, please. So in terms of planning services, JL Richards provides planning services. I would sort of describe them in 4 key areas, which are illustrated on this slide. So in the upper left-hand corner is what we sort of refer to as strategic policy planning projects. So this would be an official plan review or zoning bylaw amendment, as we're here sort of to discuss today. It could also include other things like waterfront master plans or shoreline preservation frameworks. Dave will talk a little bit later about the team that we've put together for this assignment, which includes Hutchinson Environmental Sciences Limited, and we collaborate with Hutchinson on a variety of projects across the province of Ontario that are focused on natural heritage preservation and lake management planning. So we thought, in light of your strategic plan, particularly your goals relating to environmental stewardship and land use planning, that it was important to bring that expertise forward within this assignment to ensure that those natural heritage values areas and your lakes, which are key to defining not only your community today, but your community in the future, will receive appropriate attention throughout the OP review process. On the other side of the screen in the upper right-hand side is in-house municipal services. So we currently offer land use planning services to about 45 municipalities in the province of Ontario, mainly small and mid-sized communities scattered throughout the province. So Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, Central Ontario, and Southwest Ontario. We also do some development approval work. We're very selective in terms of the development clients that we work with, given our footprint within the municipal space and the service that we offer to those 45 communities. So our development approval clients are primarily centered in the cities that we're situated in. Sudbury is an example of that. North Bay would be another. And then the final service that we provide is GIS information services, which again aligns very closely with a lot of the municipal services that our clients provide as well. Dave, the next slide. Awesome, thank you. So in getting ready for this, I think council was curious to understand sort of about the breadth and depth of experience that we have, both for official plans and zoning bylaw projects, either new official plans and zoning bylaws or updates to those documents. And so Dave and I took some time to go through, obviously, our databases, and we put together this list here. So this slide illustrates the 30 municipalities, either where we are currently working with them to create new official plans or to update their plans and zoning bylaws, or where we've done that recently. And when you look at the list of municipalities and you think about Whitestone, there's an awful lot of sort of overlap, I guess, for lack of a better word, between these communities and your community, which I think will allow us to very effectively hit the ground running and bring a broad perspective to some of the issues that are under consideration. So if I go back to your strategic plan for a moment, one of the strategic goals that you have obviously is economic development, and part of that is, what do we do to encourage home-based business? We're confronting or dealing with a lot of similar questions in the municipalities that we work in, and so we would bring that information forward into this process as well. Very similarly, under your building community strategic goal, I think one of the actions there is support for the agricultural community. And Dave and I are working on a couple of projects in Northern Ontario right now where we can leverage the knowledge that we've gained through those projects and apply it to Whitestone if selected. And I'm thinking specifically about the work that we're doing for the municipalities of Hudson, Harley, and Casey, which are in the Little Clay Belt just around the Timiskaming Shores area, as well as the Deborah to Echo Bay Planning Board, which is closer to Sault Ste. Marie, just on the eastern side of that city. And those are sort of two pockets of provincially significant prime ag land in Northern Ontario. So certainly have that experience and know how to write official plans and zoning bylaws that reflect, that can preserve, obviously agricultural land, but provide a lot of flexibility for agricultural landowners and farmers to grow their business, if you will, and ensure that farming can remain sustainable within all of the communities that we work in. So that's the overview on us and what we do. And now I'll turn it over to Dave, who's going to get into some of the more specifics as it relates to Whitestone. Thank you.
Still on an issue with some Teams notifications going off, and I didn't want them to be too noisy, so I put myself on mute. Anyhow, so a little bit about a couple of the projects we do in Parry Sound district specifically, and just to back up, I should have mentioned at the beginning, I'm actually born in Parry Sound. Still have some friends in the area. I no longer have relatives in town, but I'm very familiar with Whitestone. Usually spend a few days every summer at least in Whitestone, as I have friends there, and I'm very familiar with the municipality. Been going to Whitestone since I was since before I can remember. So the other project that's right next door that we're working on is providing day-to-day planning services for the township of McKellar. So we work closely with them on the review of planning applications. So we have a pretty good sense of some of the planning issues that are likely very similar in Whitestone, and I know there are definitely some differences, but that's just one example of some work that we're doing in the area. We are also working on an official plan for the town of Callender in sort of the northeast portion of the district. And we are providing day-to-day planning services for the township of Ryerson, much like we are in McKellar. And Jason is working diligently with our planner, Rebecca, who's also on this team to prepare a site alteration bylaw for the township of Archipelago, as well as a few other projects over the past few years that we've been working closely with them on. So we have a very good a local presence in Parry Sound District, and obviously we'd like to continue that by hopefully working with you. Move on to the next slide here. So you've gotten to know Jason and I. We've introduced ourselves. Jason, one thing I didn't mention is I have 14 years of planning experience, so not quite as long as Jason, but together we mentor a staff of about 15 or so kind of younger planners on our team, and Rebecca Elphick is the project planner proposed for this assignment. We've had the original name on the proposal, Sumaya. She's recently pursued a different opportunity, so Rebecca's kindly, excitedly agreed to jump in, and she is the face, planning face for McKellar Township as well. So she also knows the area. She has 2 years of planning experience with JL Richards, and she's just received her professional designation as a registered professional planner. So we're very excited for Rebecca. Also joining us on our team is Brett Parsons and Andrea Smith from Hutchison Environmental Services. So I'll talk a little bit about their role in the work plan when I go through the work plan, but essentially their role will be to review the official plan and the zoning bylaw with a look at natural heritage and lake capacity issues. So they'll be doing sort of a high level review of the provincial policy and provincial and federal legislation on natural heritage, and will identify gaps and opportunities associated with how to update the documents to make sure that they're reflective of best practices. In talking with Brent and Andrea, they're also very familiar with Whitestone and have done work for the municipality in the past. So Hutchison and JL Richards have worked together on several projects, including a watershed study for the city of North Bay around Trout Lake, which Jason is intimately involved in as well. We have a very good relationship with them, so they're an obvious choice to help us with the official plan policies on lake capacity and natural heritage features. So I'm going to go through the work plan. How are we for time here? So it's 3:24. So I'm just trying to decide how fast to go through it. So I'll try to go through it fairly quickly. We proposed 5 phases, essentially, with the zoning bylaw update being the final phase. We will always start our official plan projects with a kickoff meeting with town staff, council as invited as well. And in this case, Hutchison's staff. Following that meeting, we would receive the background information that we need to get started on creating a base map and to get started on the background reports as part of this project. We'd also make an information request to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the West Parry Sound Geography Network to make sure we have the shape files and the necessary provincial one-window information. I should also mention one of my previous roles in planning was as a planner and an acting team lead with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing's Municipal Service Office in Sudbury, where I regularly reviewed, commented on, and attended these sorts of one-window meetings that are the next step in the process under the first phase. So I'm very familiar with the provincial approvals process and the types of things that we'll be looking for in the official plan update. So we have what's called a pre-consultation meeting or a one-window meeting with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and then essentially we can begin the background research. We've also proposed an Indigenous engagement, at least one meeting we've proposed in the proposal. We would recommend sending sort of a notice of project commencement to those Indigenous communities in your region early as possible. Because sometimes, getting together with Indigenous communities can take time, and we want to make sure we're respectful of their schedules. So dialogue is important with your local Indigenous communities. That's reflected in our proposal. We'd also, around the same time, provide them with notice of them and the agencies in your public with a notice of special council meeting. So you have to have a special meeting of council under Section 26 of the Planning Act. And that was our first opportunity to present the planning program to you and the public in more detail. That same time, we would release our first public survey and undertake our technical review of both the OP and zoning bylaw to identify policy gaps. We do have a new provincial policy statement that's come into effect since the current OP. We've actually had about 3 different provincial policy statements that have come and gone since the OP first came into effect. So we want to make sure we get a list of what exactly the gaps are in the OP and zoning bylaw, and have those for you to consider. And we would also prepare a base map, which would be used for as the basis for updated schedules to both the OP and zoning bylaw. Moving into our policy directions phase, we would take all that background information that we received from you, from the West Prairie Sound Geography Network, and from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and we'd start to prepare our background and policy directions report. Working closely with Hutchison, who will start to prepare a report on the natural heritage and lake capacity policies in your official plan. So you'll see in our work plan, we've got a fairly detailed work plan for Hutchison and their vision for improving the official plan based on their local knowledge, having worked with Whitestone specifically, as well as other area municipalities in Parry Sound District on lake capacity and natural heritage matters. We would finish that with a meeting for you to review the reports. We'd have a meeting with staff to go over every time we have a deliverable. We propose a client meeting to go over the report or the official plan documents that we've provided, and then we would allow for a set of revisions. After that, we proposed the second public survey and holding focus groups in a public information center and a council update. And those are all scheduled for the summer of, I have a schedule on the next slide, so I'm trying not to repeat myself too much, but we've tried to make those public engagement events during the summer when most cottages are available in person. In phase 3, we've proposed to prepare red line revisions to both the OP. Although it's phase 5, we generally do the same thing with the zoning bylaw, just while it's fresh in mind. And these are just basically track changes, our recommended changes from the background research we've done, and from the public consultation of what we recommend in terms of updating your official plan and zoning bylaw. We provide that to you to have to make sure that the municipality is satisfied with it, and then we would typically circulate that draft with your approval to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing so they can have a look at it. And that timeline typically takes about 90 days at a minimum to hear back from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. For a while, they weren't providing comments at all. Our understanding is that they've started to provide comments again, but we'll work. Everybody at JLR seems to ask me if I can go bug my friends at the ministry. I seem to have the best luck at getting back to me quickly, possibly because I used to work with them. So once we hear back from them, then we're in the position to start creating a draft official plan amendment for your consideration. And then that would be presented to the public at an open house, which is an informal gathering to review the draft documents and the draft mapping. We were for refreshments to be provided, opportunity for the public to look at those documents and provide us with some preliminary thoughts. Throughout this process, we've maintained the record of public engagement, and the fourth phase is really to finalize that draft official plan amendment to prepare for the statutory public meeting. After that, take the input that we receive from the public and council and update that document, present you with the final draft to council and submit it to the ministry. Now that ministry approval time can take a while, at least 180 days, sometimes more. So during that time, we would be updating your zoning bylaw based on the red line changes that we've made, and and basically repeating this process, which for the zoning bylaw which is very similar in terms of the steps that would have been undertaken through the official plan review. So a statutory open house and public meeting is also proposed, as well as client meetings, preparation of a public meeting report. We would maintain a record of public comments on the zoning bylaw, and present that final zoning bylaw amendment to you for consideration. The last step is to consolidate any final OP changes and zoning changes at the tail end of the project. And this includes incorporating any provincial modifications. Through our early consultation with the province, we're hoping to keep modifications to a minimum. That shouldn't involve a whole lot of work at that last step. And then we like to close out each project with a client debrief meeting, and just to make sure that you are satisfied with the project, and to learn any lessons and share any lessons that we've learned from working with you. So I'm going to stop there and move quickly on to the deliverables and the schedule. So just really quickly, the deliverables that we've proposed are a public consultation strategy and work plan early on in the process, a background and issues report, as well as issues report from Hutchison Environmental, preparation of a policy direction report, all notices for the special meeting council, open houses, public information center, statutory public meeting, a public meeting report, including a record of public consultation and Indigenous engagement, and preparation of a final official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, and final consolidated versions of each document. In terms of our schedule, you'll see that we've proposed to hit the ground running as soon as possible. So I put December and January in here for phase one. And you'll note that phase two is basically the winter and spring, and then phase three includes most of the public engagement. And as I mentioned earlier, most of that is scheduled for the summer to really maximize the input that we receive from your seasonal community. Finally, we're proposing that around this time next year, you'll be in a preparation in a place to adopt the official plan. This is typical with our recommendation is typically to budget about a year to get an official plan and zoning bylaw drafted, or an update in this case drafted, and ready to adopt. So I think that is the last substantive slide from my part. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you folks to see if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, David and Jason. And we'll, without further ado, we'll open the floor to questions from councillors. Who wants to go first?
I can go first, Councillor Lamb. Let me put my
Go ahead, Councillor Lamb.
couple. Thank you very much for your presentation. So, a couple of my questions go to both groups. So I guess Jamie can think of it as I'm asking you guys. I've been around 5 terms on council, so I've in my 18 or so years on council, I've been through the official plan, I think once, and the revision of it once. So I go way back. one of the concerns in a cycle, I would have preferred us to have started this 6 or 8 months ago so that it's finished. I guess my question is, how realistic is it to get all this done in a year? I mean, I'd love, because my schedule would be, let's get her done by December 2025, because there's an election in 2026, and you don't want to be, discussing zoning bylaw changes and these sort of things into 2026, because everybody starts jumping out of the woods, and it becomes far more complicated. So how realistic, I guess, is this timetable, right?
That's a good question. Thanks very much, Councillor Lamb. It is an ambitious timeline when you're updating both OP and a zoning bylaw at the same time. I would say it's a pretty common timeline, more common than not. There's definitely things that can come up that can extend the timeline. I mean, we've been through dozens of official plan and zoning bylaw updates, and they're all unique, and the local issues are all unique. But looking at the request for proposals that you've issued, and looking at the steps that are in there, we've tried our best to craft a timeline that can meet that 12 months. And obviously, if there are any changes that are necessary, whether they come from your side or from our side, we'll be in communication with you regularly to advise you on what those might be, as issues come up. But we just finished a couple of projects recently last couple projects I've been involved with have been on time as proposed. So I mean, it does happen where it most of the time, I would say, where it's on time.
Okay, my other comment is, having been through this before, I basically, I guess, probably am politically right of center as opposed to left, but having said that, I believe in sustainable development and that sort of thing. I don't believe that everything becomes that we take an environmental approach as number one and throw everything else sort of out the window. What my experience is that the public consultation, although there may be a half a dozen people on their own that may have comments, most of it will come down to the lake associations, which are 3 or 4 of them. And in many cases, they're anti-development. I'm sure people have gone through this before, right? We're at capacity, so we don't want anyone else on our lake, and we don't want any, and then, other planners say, geez, there's room for 1,000 more lots, right? But that's the experience that I've had, is that many of the people coming forward aren't going to come forward and say, hey, you got a great official plan the way it is, let's just pass the old one, right? It's going to be some degree of acrimony or whatever. So what's my question in this area? How do you, it seems like we're having a whole bunch of meetings where the same people are going to be saying the same thing, like survey number 1, survey number 2, open house, mandatory meetings with the public, all that. Like, can't that all be condensed? In other words, are we making the exercise bigger than it really is? A year and all this work and all this money and I don't know. To me, I'm a simplistic businessman, and have we made this overcomplicated?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, any official plan project is about balancing the three main factors: is the social, the environmental, and the economic. And in your municipality, you have you have settlement areas like Dunchurch and Ardbeg. You have rural areas where rural where economic development is the main focus, and resource protection. You have your lakefront areas. You've really got everything, and you've got people with all sorts of different points of view. And our job as planners is really to try to wrangle those differing points of view into something that you folks can agree on. Now, in terms of your question about can the process be simplified, it absolutely can be, but our proposal followed the process that was identified in your RFP. We tried to follow it as closely as possible, and there was a focus on public engagement that was in that. So we wanted to make sure we were reflective of that. Of those components, the RFP. Having said that, I mean, there are definitely sort of light touch approaches I've seen municipalities take where, they just want to meet the bare basics of the Planning Act. In my experience, municipalities in sort of the Parry Sound, Muskoka region don't tend to take that light touch approach because the people have an interest in the official plan programs more often than not. It's something people are interested in. It's something people want to have a say in. So yeah, it's a very good question, and it depends. When we respond to an RFP, we're reading very closely those documents to make sure that we're giving you what you want, what you feel you need for your municipality.
Okay, I have one final question, then I'll punt it over to other people. So you provide planning services to McKellar. I think they have someone different doing their official plan. I may be wrong there, but I thought they had someone different. We have MHBC, who are our planners, and we went through a process in picking them. In my mind, it becomes this inconsistency of, for instance, your group doing the official plan and the zoning bylaw, but yet Jamie and his group doing the day-to-day planning, and it's kind of like one builds the car and then we hand it over to someone to be the mechanic on the car, right? And but yet I see it in McKellar, if indeed they've got a different group doing the official plan than you guys supplying them. So talk to that a bit. Is that a problem? It seems to be a bit of an issue in my mind, but allay my concerns in that area.
I've never had. I mean, this happens all the time. We'd love to do both jobs for our municipality, and that happens sometimes. But we compete through a competitive process, and there's certain projects that we're successful in competing on, other ones we're not. And it's the same way with the consultant that's working on the official plan and zoning bylaw update for McKellar. It doesn't impede our work as providing day-to-day planning services. And we've worked quite closely with Jamie on other projects, and I don't see how it would impede our work and understanding of the municipality and the official plan and zoning bylaw for you folks. Same sort of thing has happened in numerous other municipalities we've been involved in, where we're doing one thing and another consultant's doing another, and as long as there's open communication from both consultants, it's not something that's proven to be problematic in our experience.
Yeah, I guess I see by the way this whole exercise. I'm glad you've partnered sort of with Hutchinson. I like that part of your presentation and group. We've had some experience with Hutchinson, which is pretty good. Most of the public input, I would say, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but 90% of the public input is going to be on lake planning. The rest of it's gobbledygook, and I don't agree that a lot of people are really engaged in the official plan process. 95% of our electorate won't know what's going on and won't particularly care. There's 5%, which is 50 people or 40 people or 30 people that'll be engaged, and that's just reality, right? And they'll push it to the nth degree to try to get their will on various lakes. So that's my experience, but maybe yours is different. But anyway, thank you very much for your presentation and answering my questions.
Thanks. Can we get questions from Councillor Braidway, did you have your
Yeah,
hand up?
I have a couple of questions. I guess this is where Councillor Lamb and I differ a little bit. I do have a concern about the environment and wanting to know sort of how you incorporate or how you bring together the the need for understanding climate change into your development of an official plan or an official plan update.
Well, consideration of climate change is something that's built into all of our provincial, all of our official plans and zoning bylaws. I mean, we're looking at strategies for adaptation and mitigation to the impacts and effects of climate change, whether it's through looking at our floodplain policies, our policies for natural hazards, or our policies for economic development and growth and settlement in terms of mitigating impacts on climate change. The provincial policy statement is pretty clear that the goal is to have efficient development forms where it makes sense. So thinking about Dunchurch and Ardbeg, which are your settlement areas, maybe having a slightly more flexible options for residential uses in those areas, but as I mentioned before, it's about balancing the environmental as well when it comes to lake water quality. And so our recommendations are definitely informed by our understanding of climate change. And but what it comes down to is our recommendations on things like natural hazards, natural heritage, and lake capacity will be filled in by our partners, Hutchison Environmental, and their work on those sections of the official plan. We want the environmental policies in your plan to be based on science, and then we transform that into policy. And this is what we do in all of our official plan projects. So I'm not sure if that entirely answers the question, but it is definitely front and center of our minds as registered professional planners in Ontario.
And just a follow up, does that, I'm not very, this is my first time through this, so I've never been part of the official plan update before. Does this also in the zoning bylaws, does it do these kinds of policies affect then some of our policies that way as well?
They definitely could. For example, the example that comes to mind most commonly is floodplain mapping. So if a municipality through their official plan review comes across updated floodplain mapping from the province, that would have to be reflected in the zoning bylaw as well. So your setbacks from rivers, if the high water mark in a plan that's drafted 20 years ago, and that high water mark has changed, then the zoning setbacks would be impacted by that. In terms of the permitted uses, that's a little more tricky. We can include green development standards in official plans, and zoning provisions can speak to those. But the short answer is yes. Those the zoning provisions will be impacted. They have to implement the policies of the official plan, so that everything in the zoning bylaw needs to be updated to conform with the changes that are made to the OP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Woods.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I didn't know because I have more financial questions I'd like to ask. I didn't know if we were gonna wait till it closed or if we were gonna actually have the closed for that.
I understand that if they are detailed questions about things like rates and so on that the proponents had asked us to treat as confidential, that those should be in the closed session. But I don't know if they're just general questions about how you had allocated the cost to the different phases of the project or something. I guess you could ask those now. I don't. Yeah, that's my understanding anyway.
I think I'll just wait till it closed, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
All right, thank you. and I guess, well, I guess I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask. There was a reference in it might have been in Jason's part, I guess, but to Indigenous, or at least in the project plan, to Indigenous consultation. Can you indicate specifically which First Nations you would be talking to, or you think we should be talking to?
Yeah, I was already thinking about this, and I would definitely think Wissahickon and Magnetawan. But it's the net we would cast would be based on a review of available federal treaty information. So it would, most of the communities that are part of the same treaty as Wissahickon, up about down the Georgian Bay coastline, we would probably recommend notifying. Whether or not you get a response or interest is really a different question. That can depend. But you'd be looking at notifying Henvey Inlet, Shawanaga, Magnetawan, Wissahickon, probably Moose Deer Point. And I don't think, I mean, you'd have to notify Wata. That's not really the traditional territory that you're in. But we can have that discussion with you before we send out the letters. And what we recommend every time is we will talk to MAH as well. They may have some input. Typically, I'll send a list of the Indigenous communities that I'm planning to circulate. The other group I should mention is it's not First Nation, but is the Métis Nation of Ontario. That's kind of a standard addition to our circulation lists on these things. So I will send a list to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and my contact there and say, hey, is there anyone else you think that we've missed on this list? And they usually respond very quickly to me and say, hey, you've missed Dokis, which is unlikely to be interested in your official plan, but you never know. And then we would recommend that those letters, the early consultation letters, be sent out under your letterhead, because we really want to promote you being a relationship builder. We want that relationship, that future relationship with First Nation communities to be with you. We would love to have a relationship with them too as a company, obviously, but it's really important that the municipal First Nation relationship is what we're trying to promote here. So,
and well, thank you. Have you had any what you consider to be useful input in as far as the OP is concerned from First Nations in any of the work that you've done so far?
Not all the time, but definitely sometimes. I've had official plans where we've got quite detailed. I have one right now where we've got quite detailed comments from a First Nation, an official plan in northwestern Ontario. They're very interested in the official plan. They've commented on not just things like cultural heritage and archaeology, and wanting to make sure that areas where they have knowledge of sacred sites being avoided for development purposes, but things like economic development partnerships, wanting to partner with the municipality, or in this case, a planning board, wanting to partner with that planning board about future economic opportunities, and commercial development. That's those sorts of things. Those are the type of comments that we've seen in there as well.
Maybe if I could add one small point. Dave is answering all the questions. I'm feeling like the third wheel in the discussion here, but it's okay. No, it's good. So the flip side, I think, to that is J.L. Richards also has very strong relationships with many First Nation communities across the province of Ontario. So Dave and I, for example, are just about to embark on a new master planning exercise for a First Nation community in Northern Ontario. So we also see that, our understanding of their interests and their perspectives in the municipal land use planning process, very similar to our work that we do with private development clients. We kind of understand both sides. And as you can sort of see, Dave knows a lot of folks from a lot of places. And so he is a good sort of connector, if I could describe it that way, to make sure that engagement is there. because it is a key thing that the province looks for when they come to decide on your official plan policies. They want to know what steps have you taken to engage Indigenous communities in the planning process, because their decision on the plan has to take Indigenous interests into consideration as well. So there's a question earlier about schedule and schedule risks. This is a potential schedule risk, so we want to do the work early to make sure that we've done the outreach and done all of the documentation around the outreach. So by the time the plan gets to the province, they can make a relatively efficient decision on it.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is around a couple of things that did have come up in so far in the presentation, but that we don't have, my sense at least is we don't have very much in our current official plan about them. And one of them is the whole subject of affordable housing or attainable housing, if you prefer. I prefer that term. And the other one is agriculture. Whether there are things that we might be able to do. My question is really around, are there things that we should be doing? I know the province is talking about these things and telling us we should do things. We should have something in our plans. But around attainable housing, first of all, or around making more effective use of the agricultural land that we do have. And I just wondered if you've had any experience with, if you could give us any insight into what we might be putting in that we don't have now in those areas.
Guess I'll go with the housing first. So, yeah, I mean, you definitely need to have all. I would recommend you don't have any fully serviced settlement areas. So the Planning Act requires certain municipalities that have urban service land to have additional residential units. As a rural municipality with no sewer and water, you have more flexibility, but we would definitely recommend updating the policies for the municipality to allow for additional residential units in certain parts of the municipality where it makes sense. You may not want to see them on, at capacity lakes or on private roads, but in Dunchurch or Ardbeg or maybe in your rural area, it makes a lot of sense to allow people to have that option for maybe an additional residential unit. Within an urban, a settlement area, you can also provide for additional types of dwelling units, semi-detached, maybe small apartments or something like that. That might be a little bit much for Dunchurch, but one of the things we do is we work with the DSAB to see what their needs are in terms of affordable and attainable housing, and we talk to them. We look through their housing and homelessness plans. We look through if they have a land needs assessment, and I know that Parry Sound North Bay District Social Services Administration Board does have a land needs assessment. I just received it today, and it should mention of Whitestone and allow us to make that linkage and work with them to see what, not just what they think the needs are for affordable, attainable housing, but we would get that information from you as well. What are the demands? What are you seeing locally in terms of people wanting to build maybe something a little bit different than what you've seen in the past in terms of housing? When it comes to agriculture, I work with a number of agricultural-based municipalities, and I know that Whitestone has a long history of agriculture up the Great Northern Road and beyond. But I don't believe you have what's considered a prime agricultural designation. I don't believe OMAFRA has ever asked for one. If they did want one, we would find out very early at the one window meeting. But even without a prime agricultural designation, I mean, there's lots of things you can put in your official plan to promote agriculture. You can include agricultural business as a thing that you could use a community improvement plan for. Your official plan for the rural designation should permit the full range of agricultural uses and on-farm diversified uses and agricultural related uses. So those are planning terms. They basically mean on-farm businesses. So let's say a feed mill or for an agriculture related business, or could be a bed and breakfast or a farm vacation or a plowing match. a cidery or a microbrewery. Those sorts of things are all examples of on-farm diversified uses that you might wish to permit, at least in the official plans. Some of those can be as of right. Some of them you might want to control through a zoning process, but that's definitely a lens that we would look at your OP with to make sure it reflects the best practices for agriculture and economic development related to agriculture.
Okay, thanks. And just one more, and again, it's come up already. The matter has to do with lake plans. Councillor Lamb mentioned earlier that or hinted at least that lake plans are probably going to be an area where there is public input, and I think there's going to be a lot more public input than he suggested. But in any case, we have quite a few lakes, and part of our existing official plan, there is a lake specific section for each one of them. And some of them are in fact already, for all intents and purposes, at capacity. But anyway, I guess my question to you really is, have you included in your proposal to us a sufficient amount of time and effort towards lake plans? Because there's a couple of the larger lakes, for example, where a lake plan has not been done for a while, and I'm just curious if you see that as in scope of what you've proposed to us, or out of scope, or if you would require, if you think it might not end up consuming more time and energy than you originally budgeted.
So I think you've got several kind of lake planning policies that are built into your official plan. The reason we proposed our focus groups was to really allow us to meet with those lake associations individually and get their input on those policies. So I think the answer would be yes. We have considered lake planning through our proposal, and I think the time we've proposed in our focus groups is sufficient. If there are demands for additional meetings, we'll work with Paula and Wendy and let them know, and we will proceed with anything out of scope until you decide to add it to scope. If there's but we've proposed meetings with the different lake associations through our description of the focus groups. So we're hoping that we've met what you're looking for there.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm conscious of our time here, and I would like you, unless there's anything more of an urgent nature that we need to ask JL Richards, to move on to our second presentation, because we're about an hour in already. And so if I could then ask Jamie Robinson if you would like to go ahead and make your presentation, and then we'll come back around to questions. Is that okay, Jamie? Are you?
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I just had run to the washroom there and came back and heard my name.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to share slides as well, or?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you, Worship. Bear with me while I pull them up. Can you see my screen okay?
I can.
Great. Well, thank you, Your Worship. And
do you want to make it full screen, or I guess it doesn't matter. You've got the slides down the side. That's fine.
Can you see that okay now? Is that full screen?
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
So thank you, worship and members of council, for having me this afternoon. I will try my best to be as succinct as possible and on point, understanding that it's 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, but I also understand how important this project is to both your municipality as well as ourselves. So just a few, few comments about us. In terms of MHBC, I think you know us fairly well since we've been providing services to you for a while now. But the company, the main comments I just like to make about the company is that we are a land use planning company. We do have some complementary services such as landscape architecture, urban design, and a cultural heritage team, but we are strictly a land use planning company. We have an office the company started out in Kitchener. There's an office in Woodbridge, Hamilton, and Barrie, and London as well. And that's the complement of our office. We have about 140 staff currently. So as far as land use planning companies go, I believe we're the largest in the province. This exercise would be undertaken out of the Barrie office, where I am a partner in that office. And we have about 25 people in this office. So just in terms of what we offer, first, when I ask people why they hire MHBC, they typically tell us that it's because we provide pretty straightforward advice, that we're able to talk on a level and communicate on a level that people understand. We're succinct in our communication, and that we use plain language that folks from various walks of life can understand and relate to. So with that, we have a lot of experience working in rural and shoreline municipalities throughout the province, and we try to, through our consultation, ensure that it's an engaging process and not just consultation. We have, in this instance, tailored our consultation process approach to what we believe suits the municipality's requirements. In this case, we're not offering or suggesting that the municipality adopt sort of the Cadillac version of public engagement and public consultation. We think a lot of the issues that are prevalent in the municipality are well known, and they've in many cases been existing for quite some time. What we think is important is spending the time to craft policies and a land use framework to tackle those issues. But we have provided an opportunity for the required engagement in a process that we believe is tailored appropriately to the needs of the municipality. Just a bit about myself before I get too far into this. So I am a partner with MHBC. So MHBC is a partner-owned company, and I do own shares in the company. I am the person responsible for this project. I will be the lead planner on this project as well, with assistance from some of our other staff members. Myself, I grew up in North Simcoe County in Moonstone. We have a family cottage just outside of Port Severn. I'll also be spending much of next week just west of you folks, on the Nayscoot River. So I spent lots of time in the area. We also provide planning services to a number of municipalities throughout the Parry Sound District and Muskoka area, and I'm very familiar with shoreline, rural, and agricultural issues. Both my grandparents were farmers. One was the reeve of Tiny Township for 17 years, and the other was the clerk of Madani Township for 40 plus years. So I've got a lot of experience dealing with rural and shoreline issues, and I would suggest relating to people that reside and have seasonal properties in those areas. Just in terms of MHBC, again, I believe we understand the issues that not only face you folks, but that are common issues throughout cottage country and throughout lake-based municipalities, and that affect the small rural settlement areas. in preparing official plans, what we try to do is provide policies that are in many instances enabling policies that hopefully allow for what is appropriate development. So that's policies that protect what's important, so the environment and natural heritage features, but really provide an enabling framework that's simple, succinct, but really does get the job done in terms of providing opportunities for appropriate growth and development within your communities. One of those examples would be, which we anticipate would be a focus through both the official plan and your implementing zoning bylaw on home-based businesses, which are often referred to as home occupations or home industries, and ensuring those policies are updated and regulations are updated and tailored to reflect the new sharing economy that we're in, and the ability for people to work from both their permanent residences, but also their shoreline residences in a manner that's appropriate and that is compatible with the surrounding residential uses. So we think the modernization of those policies and regulations are something that will be important through the preparation of this document. We also recognize the importance of lakes, that lake quality and water quality plays within your community. And based on our experience, we have a great understanding of what the policy framework needs to be to reflect the preservation of that important resource and management of that resource. So just in terms of a few items that we think we're familiar with and that we think are important within the development of your new official plan and zoning bylaw. First, providing some policies and a framework to deal with affordable housing. What we expect that will include is opportunities for, and again, I like to use the term enabling policies that direct where these things can occur. So affordable housing in rural communities often occurs in the form of second dwelling units or third dwelling units on a property, often referred to as accessory dwelling units. Opportunities for potentially enabling some multi-unit development where appropriate in your settlement areas. Now, again, through planning documents, we can't compel developers or people to build things, but we can provide a framework that helps facilitate those developments from occurring. We think short-term rentals are potentially an issue that need to be explored further through your official plan and potentially your zoning bylaw, so that there's a framework put in place to appropriately manage the sharing economy and the short-term rentals of cottage properties and in some cases year-round dwelling units within your municipality. Often, I think a part of that also relates to the affordable housing piece and making sure that there's an appropriate balance between providing accommodation as well as traditional rental opportunities. Lake capacity, you've had a lot of work done on your official plan previously, and the lake associations have been heavily involved in lake capacity and the policies that affect those. We're very familiar with planning tools available and policies that are available to appropriately manage lake capacity while providing for suitable development opportunities where they are carefully managed and appropriate. We did not include as a consultant that specifically deals with lake quality and lake capacity information in our proposal. We felt that information was available currently and that there's sufficient information currently to be able to craft policies as we have done in other municipalities. We felt that there has been some work historically done on that issue. And if the municipality decides that further work is done, it could be done outside of the scope of this official plan and zoning bylaw. Further, we believe that in your municipality, you do have rural areas and you do have agricultural areas, but from a land use planning perspective, much of what happens in your municipality occurs within the shoreline area. So shoreline character is something that we believe is very important. And really that's about managing the built form that occurs along the shorelines. So the principal cottages, also the accessory structures that you see along the shoreline, whether it's docks or boathouses or detached garages or those sorts of things, with the natural environment. So it's that balance between built form and natural environment. And that's what our planning documents in the shoreline area really try to provide policies to ensure that there is an appropriate balance so that folks can reasonably use their shoreline properties, that there's good opportunities for storage, for accessory structure storage for vehicles and equipment, so that properties can be maintained, or owners have the opportunity to maintain their properties in a tidy manner with things placed away in good storage, but also that they're not overdeveloped from that structure perspective, that vegetation is maintained and buildings are set back an appropriate distance from the shoreline to ensure that character's maintained. Finally, we think there's an opportunity in the municipality's OP to direct where growth occurs and focus future residential growth within settlement areas. And again, when I refer to growth, I'm not referring to shoreline development. That's really recreation or seasonal based development, but providing an opportunity for growth from a residential perspective, but also from ensuring there's enough land designated to support those population supportive uses or employment uses. So if an employer would like to come to your community, that there's an opportunity and shovel ready land ready for those folks to operate their business. Why should you choose MHBC? Well, I've given you a few reasons already, just in terms of the work that we've been involved in, the familiarity we have with the area, with your planning documents, and with the issues that face you. Also with the people of your community, as every meeting we're becoming more familiar with different members of your community as we provide those planning services. We have in-house GIS technicians that have prepared zoning bylaws and official plan schedules for municipalities throughout the province. We do have an understanding from a zoning perspective of the importance of definitions and permitted uses, and that zoning bylaw is really the tool that implements your planning documents. It's the tool that gets used the most in municipal offices on a day-to-day basis, and there needs to be very clear regulations and rules outlined within that document, and definitions, as well as drawings that help to interpret the bylaw for your building official and for your municipal employees. And we believe that's why, as part of our proposal, we've included a significant amount of the budget towards the zoning bylaw, because we believe it is a very important tool for implementing the planning regime within the municipality. Next, I have a lot of experience providing defendable land use, or preparing defendable land use planning documents, and have appeared before the tribunal on a number of different occasions in terms of defending official plans and zoning bylaws that I've prepared. So just in terms of a summary, we do look forward to, if we're successful, our continued relationship with the municipality and working with council and staff. We do have a solid understanding of the planning issues that face you, and we're confident in the proposal and the costs that we've prepared, and our ability to deliver a project or two projects on time and on budget. I'm not proposing to go through the full work plan that's identified. I know you've had another council meeting on this topic, and council's had an opportunity to review our proposals. So I'm assuming you've all had an opportunity to review that information in detail. And if you've got any questions about what we've provided in our work plan, I'd certainly be happy to do my best to try to answer those for you today. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide the presentation, and I look forward to any questions or comments that you may have. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie. Well, once again, I'll open the floor up to questions from councillors.
Yeah, I'll go. I went first last time, might as well go first this time. Jamie,
Go ahead.
sort of thank you for coming. Sort of the same question. What do you see in terms of the schedule to get this? I understand that I've always thought of the official plan as a guiding document, if you will, and the zoning bylaw as the enabling document or documents to implement the official plan. I would like to see all that wrapped up by this time next year, before we get into 2026. Do you see that as achievable, or do you see it, you know, we may be waiting for the government to officially approve it, but I mean, all the work being done within the next year, is that possible or likely?
Sure. So through your worship to the counselor, we've designed a project. First off, yes, I believe it's achievable. We've designed a work plan that gets approval of the documents that are required by December of 2025, which is what was requested. We believe we can deliver on that requirement. What will be important is careful management and check-in of both the project and the budget. I also think that timeline is important to ensure the project stays on budget. We're all aware that as projects extend in lifetime, those also have budget implications in many instances. So I think regular check-in meetings are extremely important to make sure we continue to meet those incremental timelines that are outlined within the project timeline. I don't think there's any chance, to your last point, that you're going to get approval from the province, who is the approval authority on this, within that time period. But we can only control what we can control. We can't control others and the decision makers. So to that end, we will manage the project in such a way that achieves your required timing requirements.
Okay, just like to clarify in terms of when I said, can we go a simpler route? This council's met a few issues that I think we've taken sort of a conservative route on. For instance, short-term rentals, we looked at a bunch of short-term rental provisions by Tiny Township and a whole bunch of others, right? But we came up with a very simple set of directions to staff that don't overcomplicate everything. We don't have parking plans in there. We don't have a bunch of other things that we thought just you know wasn't necessary in Whitestone. Whitestone is an area that historically hasn't over-regulated things compared to other communities, particularly in Muskoka, right? And I think at least my approach to the official plan is very similar, and that I want everyone to have input, and ultimately it's council's decision, but I don't want to overcomplicate it, and have 3 or 4 public sessions where basically we're hearing the same thing, and so anything we can do to, I'll say, simplify the process, I'm in favor of, and again, that's not to overlook lake planning or any other element of it, but I don't want to overdo it either. So that's just a comment more than a question, but thank you, Jamie, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Councilor Bray.
Yeah, I think I'll pretty much ask the same question as to how you would incorporate climate change and environmental extreme weather into our official plan and also the zoning bylaws. I think that municipalities now have to start looking at those things And if this plan is going to be our latest plan for quite a few years, then I think we should be looking at those kinds of things and making sure that we are addressing some of the issues that the climate change people have been talking about.
Certainly. So when I think of climate change is dealt with differently from a planning perspective, I would suggest in a rural area versus an urban area, a rural shoreline area versus an urban
Yes.
area. I think that's an important distinction first off. But really the main areas that get addressed through climate change in planning documents when it relates to a community such as yours, I'd suggest relate to stormwater management. So how do we manage storm flows appropriately in two ways, both from a quantity perspective, so how much stormwater there is and controlling its release, and then the quality perspective. So what's the quality of that water when it's released back out into the environment? So there needs to be some policies in the OP that speak to stormwater and its appropriate management through the development process. That's both new development or redevelopment. And then also the second area relates to natural hazards. So what's encompassed under natural hazards? That's things like flooding and erosion hazards. So making sure there's development is appropriately set both above a flood elevation, for example, of a river or a lake, and also set back an appropriate distance from a river or a lake. And then from an erosion perspective, we would include setbacks in the bylaw. So the official plan would provide some policies that's to the effect of the zoning bylaw has to incorporate setback provisions from steep slopes or erosion hazards, and then the zoning bylaw would specify what those are. So for example, 10 meters or 15 meters or 20 meters from an erosion hazard limit, or from the top of a slope that's greater than X%, for example. So that if there is any future flooding or anything like that that could lead to erosion, that your development's safe, or buildings and structures are safe from those. So those are the two kind of key elements I'd suggest as it relates to climate change. We can include some enabling policies about low impact design, which are things that for the infiltration of rainwater into the ground instead of it running onto the street. But those are more urban things. Those items generally occur kind of naturally through a rural development or any sort of cottage or shoreline development anyways. But maintenance of vegetative buffers along shorelines, they all sort of play a role in managing water and climate change. So
I think one of the things that every year is a bit of a concern is wildfires, because we have so much crown land. And I think that from the perspective of the amount of crown land and sometimes the inability for anybody to get to these places, because I'm just bringing that out as being something that is some of our dry seasons have been quite extreme in the last 2 or 3 years. And we've also had a tornado go through. We've had extremely high winds on sometimes. So I'm just saying, like, there's all this weather as well that is, I'm not sure how it pertains to planning, but what does that mean for us as a municipality and trying to mitigate as best we can some of the issues that could crop up from these things.
maybe just one brief comment on that related to wildfires is that the provincial policy statement does have policy requirements that municipalities address that. One thing that we do the planning work for the municipality of Temagami, and one of the concerns there, like there have historically been a number of wildfires in that area as well. And one of the concerns there is the dynamic of preserving shoreline vegetation from a character perspective, but ensuring you don't have vegetation next to houses that could, or cottages or shoreline properties that could lead to fire. So we need to make sure in your official plan that there's appropriate policies that balance, and in the zoning bylaw regulations that balance the natural character piece of the shoreline with public health and safety, right? And making sure that there are those fire breaks around residential properties or limited sporadic vegetation so that fires can't burn as intensely right up to residential properties.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Woods?
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't get off mute. I'm okay with the questions right now, Mr. Mayor. Just like to thank Jamie for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess I can go next and come back to a couple of things that and just on the question of the timing that Councillor Lamb raised earlier. I'm curious, are there things that we as a municipality need to do, either our staff need to do or our volunteers need to do, that are you know, time dependent as far as keeping the schedule is concerned?
So what your staff and what your, in order for us to maintain this schedule, what your staff need to do, and counselors to an extent, are review draft documents in a timely manner and get us responses back on those documents so we can continue, if we're the successful candidate, that we can continue our work and processing of the plan. And my recommendation is that we always include a kickoff meeting or startup meeting at the initiation of the project. And the real focus on that with any sort of business proposal or really life relationship is building expectations. So there needs to be some expectations set on the sides of both parties so that those timelines are known, so that we can get responses back in a timely manner and then turn things back around to you folks. So help with that. We always rely on municipal staff to help circulate notices and those sorts of things. We prepare them, but yeah, from a timing perspective, it's really about having a timely response to any documents that we send over. So looking forward and planning ahead to set some time aside to do those things.
So other than those kinds of things, scheduling meetings and reviewing and so on, there isn't any legwork that we're being expected to do. Is that true? Like going out and reviewing documents or getting you know, capacity information on lakes or any of those kinds of things.
I don't think so, other than we always ask at the start of the process if typically staff maintain a list of issues with bylaws or issues with their OP, and just provide us those and their feedback initially so we can get going on drafting things.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you the same question I asked our previous presenter about Indigenous consultation. Any comments on that? Any experiences you've had, good or bad? Or
so, first off, got a lot of experience doing it. I'm the planning consultant for Rama First Nations, where Casino Rama is. So I have a good relationship with those folks. We've been dealing with Wissahickon extensively through the preparation of the Town of Parry Sound official plan and through the work that we do for Seguin Township. But as far as who gets consulted, The ministry has, at the start of a process, Municipal Affairs and Housing has a one window planning meeting at the start where they specifically identify, based on the treaties in the province, which First Nation or Indigenous communities are required to be consulted on the plan. So that's where that list comes from. At that initiation meeting with the ministry is they provide us with the list. But so those are the folks that we'll likely communicate with. And I always, my preference in these instances, if there is a direct relationship with an Indigenous community, that you meet them on their terms as much as possible. And the relationship needs to be with the mayor and with the chief of the First Nation. That's how the communication protocol works for First Nations, is mayor to chief, not administrator at the municipality to chief. It's a level of respect thing. So that's my experience.
Okay, thank you for that. I asked previously about incorporating things related in the OP related to affordable housing and agriculture, and you did comment a bit on that in your presentation. Do you believe that for a municipality of our size and complexity, we should be setting aside some land for affordable housing, for example, in terms of zoning, for economic development purposes related to commercial uses and industrial uses and or specific kinds of agriculture uses? Do you see us doing anything like that? Or if so, what?
I would envision from a planning perspective that you're going to make sure you've got enough lands designated to support potential employment uses that might come to your municipality. And it is likely a good idea to zone those lands in advance as well, so it makes them shovel ready. As far as affordable housing goes, I think it's something that can be looked at, but I'm gonna be honest, it might be difficult to pre-zone land for a specific type of housing that's quote unquote affordable. But I really believe it's those enabling frameworks of allowing for second units in certain places or third units in places that will help to provide for that affordable housing supply within the municipality. Also making sure that potentially looking at lot size considerations, and are there some opportunities for some smaller lot sizes and smaller homes for those individuals that don't have families that may want that how one income people or younger people that to keep them in the community so they have their own space. So some creative ways of looking at those, I think, could also be part of this discussion and documents.
Okay, thank you. I guess at this point, what I might want to do is ask if there are any questions that you have that haven't been answered. Anything that you want to hear either or both proponents respond to. And I'm talking about questions that don't specifically relate to the pricing that's been proposed. Because the next question I'll ask, if there aren't any, is if you feel a need to go into a closed session for the purpose of asking questions about the financial matters, in which case we would have to we would do that, and then we would end up separating the two proponents, right? So we'd have a separate session with each one. But if somebody wants to do that, but before we do that, are there any questions that don't involve pricing and that sort of thing that you would like to raise before while we're in an open session.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is closed or not, but the document that I remember or documents I remember seeing, and I don't have them in front of me, was that Jamie's group was more expensive than the Richards group. And I somehow recall, Jamie, you were like 132,000 or something like that. Am I close? But anyway, my question really is, one group had far more on the official plan and less money allocated towards zoning. And Jamie, I think you were the opposite. I think most of your money was allocated towards the zoning piece and not the official plan. So can you explain that? Can someone explain that to me? You would think the process is the process.
Well, I can just
That's
explain from.
that is an open session question, by the way, because it was shared in the public meeting. We did have a report, if you recall, from our staff that showed those numbers, and so I think I would, you know, provide an opportunity for both of the proponents to respond to see how they broke.
Because my business approach to the whole thing was, well, can we pick one for one and one for the other? And we'll get the best of both worlds. And I think I was told, no, the same group has to do both or whatever. But is that even true? Does the same group have to do two? I don't know. But anyway, help me. Again, I don't have the document, so I think I'm pretty accurate at saying what I said. So talk away, gentlemen, and
I would love to work with, I wish that could go that way, because I'm sure that Jason would agree. We'd both love to work with Jamie on something. We enjoyed crossing paths in the past, and hope to cross paths many more times in the future. I would suggest that the difference you're seeing in ours, with the more resources being sort of front-ended on the official plan, is related to the public engagement. We've kind of, our thinking is that, you know, you have an open house and the public information sessions on the official plan policies. A lot of the comments we're going to receive are going to be about zoning. So we're going to be taking comments for both processes. So there's a lot of just there was no need to kind of repeat each step for the public engagement sessions in the zoning. The zoning, we did propose one extra open house, but in terms of the focus groups and that sort of thing, we can take comments on both of those documents. The other thing is, some of the environmental work we've requested Hutchison to help us on in terms of policy development. Most of those changes are typically with lake capacity policies and zoning regulations. The policy basis is going to be a little more lengthy and weighty than the zoning provisions that come out of it. So that's why that there's a little bit more money there. Yeah, the zoning is a little more recent than the OP as well, zoning bylaw. So there should hopefully be fewer. We haven't done our technical review yet, but we are hoping. It looked like there was fewer changes that would be necessary compared to the OP.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We felt that based on our review of the RFP, the work that was necessary to complete the official plan and the hours associated with it were very similar to the work and the hours that were required to complete the zoning bylaw. So that's the reason why our budgets are very similar. If I can compare the two proposals, which I think you folks can do as well, is that that we were pretty tailored in what the public consultation piece of the official plan was, because we believe we're aware of what the issues generally are. And we felt that the standard open house and public meetings would provide the information that we needed to prepare the documents. So we didn't do a significant amount of other public consultation, as we felt with our time in the community and the review that we had a good understanding of what the community's needs are. We've talked to the lake associations previously, so we didn't want to spend the municipality's money getting information that we already were aware of. And we felt that it was very important through the zoning bylaw process to spend the time that's necessary, making sure we had the definitions and the zone standards and that implementation tool ready to go. So that's, I think, all I could say about why our budgets are the same or very similar for both the OP and zoning bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions that you want to ask while we're still open?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, please, Councilor Wright.
Okay, I'm not on mute. I just wondered if in both of your plans, have you would be thinking about having a Zoom part of the meeting, or being able to provide for that so that people who aren't living here or can't make the meeting in person would be able to participate, your public meetings?
That's
I-
definitely something. Oops, sorry. But do you want me to answer?
I was gonna maybe save you the trouble of answering. My sense of it is, and the clerk can comment if I'm wrong about this, but these are Whitestone public meetings that we're talking about having. They're going to follow
Okay,
our procedures. I don't think the consultants would be setting up their own separate, or am I wrong about that?
You're correct. We would follow your procedures for the public meetings. The focus groups, typically we find those go better in person. So we've proposed that to be in person, as well as the open house. But the meetings with council can be, I'm sure you do hybrid meetings right now, I believe. So we would just follow your lead.
So yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Are you
it
saying
does.
you would have
Yeah.
you would hold focus groups that are, if I heard David correctly, you'd hold a focus group would be you try to get people together around a table and not have it all in person. Is that, so they're real focus groups with a small group of people, like 10 people, or?
And we don't know how many people would be in them. It would be up to our vision is that it would be up to the response we get from the invitations. The focus, I think, would be on the lake associations for these focus groups. Although we can definitely have conversation with you if there's other specific groups. So you mentioned agriculture. If there's a farmers association that you'd rather. We can piggyback lake associations into one meeting and have a larger meeting, and have maybe a smaller meeting with an agricultural association. Those are all sorts of things we can finalize through our at our kickoff meeting with you folks.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? All right, so I will now ask the next question, which is does a member of council wish us to adjourn to a closed session in order to discuss anything more detailed in regards to the price proposals, the pricing?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Woods.
Yes.
I guess I'll just ask the question here. I thought we would leave anything financial to the close, but so costs that both of you have presented us with, are those hardline costs? We're not going to spend more? based on what you've given us for a cost and a plan, you know, are we gonna be finished on time for that money, or could it, you know, result in, you know, a little bit extra time and a extra, say, 10, 20, $30,000 kind of thing?
But we put a work plan here that we feel confident in, that we can meet the timeline and the cost. Sometimes there are additional things that come up, and you may wish us to add scope, and we can definitely have that conversation with you. Or on the converse, you may decide, you know what, we'd like to revisit the need for X, Y, or Z. This is the proposal we've made to try to reflect your request for proposals. We're obviously happy to have a chat about specifics if there's something that you would like to add or remove.
Just
Jamie?
from my perspective, the same's true. What we've provided is a proposal to do the tasks that are necessary to provide you with an official plan and a zoning bylaw. Should you decide to add additional tasks to this, then budget obviously changes. But if we stick to these tasks, then it can be delivered for this on this time in this budget. What I can tell you about historically in previous exercises, we have in most cases, we've stuck to the timeline, stuck to the budget, and stuck to the tasks and delivered the project on budget. So, but there are some instances where people might want to do, based on public consultation, maybe there's something brand new that comes up and they want to do a further meeting or something new or additional. And obviously, if that wasn't in the original quote, it needs to be looked at separately. I think that would be the same for kind of anybody, whether you're doing a road project or anything. It's the same kind of situation.
Okay, thank you both. I'm good with that, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm not hearing a need to go into a closed session then, is
Not from me.
that correct?
I don't need to go into close.
No. All right. Well, all right, that saves us a couple of steps in our agenda, which is adjourning to a closed session and reconvening to a closed session and all of those kinds of things. So my next question is, if I follow down the basic agenda that we're on here, our next step was to well, our next step was to consider a contract award. And so I guess once again, what I would do is ask the councilors, do you wish to do this today, or do you wish to have a little bit of time to reflect on what you've heard and raise it at our next regular schedule, raise the actual award at our next regularly scheduled meeting? What would you like to do?
Well, I can make my decision today, but if the rest want to wait,
Councilor Bray, how about you?
you're muted, I think, Janice.
Yes, yes.
Sorry about that. I think I would like to have a little bit more discussion as council on this before we make a decision, but maybe everybody thinks that they can make that decision now. But I would like more discussion.
Councilor Woods?
I could go either way, Mr. Mayor. But I could make a decision today. We could wait, bring it up at the next meeting. I just think if we did wait till we brought up at the next meeting, it might give Councillor Nash an opportunity to give a little bit of insight as to what he thinks, or maybe he might have a question. I know he's not here today, but that's for medical reasons, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I wondered about that. That's why I asked if you we are in a public meeting, as you know, but the advice that our CAO has obtained is that there is no reason for us to go in camera and go into a closed session to to have the deliberation. That wasn't the purpose of the closed session. According to the advice that you received, the only reason to go into the only justification to go into a closed session is to discuss things that are considered proprietary by the consultants. So, and so far we've had a pretty open discussion of their proposals and in an open session. So anyway, it's I guess I'll put the question, if someone would like to move that we defer to another meeting, now's the chance. Otherwise, I guess we'll entertain a motion to award the contract. But well, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to defer then, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's let me just get a piece of paper here. Need a blank piece of paper. There we are. Okay, so the motion would be that moved by Councillor Woods, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone defer its decision on awarding this contract to the next regularly scheduled meeting. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Okay. Let's move by Councillor Woods, seconded by Councillor Bray. Any further discussion? All right, I will call the question on the motion then. Guess we can just have a show of hands, or Councillor Woods, I need to hear your voice because I can't see your hand.
Councillor Woods, yes.
Okay, Councillor Bray, yes. Councillor Lamb?
No.
Can we record the vote, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, we can. I guess I will then ask our clerk to call the roll in order, please.
Yes, one moment, Mr. Mayor, I just need to get the list.
I have the list, if you can all hear me.
We can, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
clerk?
Councillor Lamb,
No.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Just for the awarding of the contract to the next meeting. All right, thank you. Well, I believe that we are now done with our with the main body of our meeting, but we still have two items. A confirmatory bylaw. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate.
Councillor Woods, yes.
Yes, thank you. That's carried. And finally, adjournment. Mover and seconder.
I'll move.
Councillor Bray moves, seconded by,
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
thank you, Councillor Woods. Now therefore be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned at it is 5 p.m. until the regular council meeting of Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please indicate.
Councillor Woods, yes.
Thank you. That's carried. And my thanks again to our
They're all gone.
I'm going to say they're gone. Yes. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good
Enjoy your
evening.
weekend.
Good night. Have a good
Thank
week.
you. Good night, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Yep, bye.
Bye now.